as far as a career goes, like how to be successful in a career, because this is something that I've also thought about, and something that, like we said, we learn from people around us. And with my dad, I remember being a little boy, and he was loading bags on an airplane. He worked as a baggage handler for American Airlines. And he was telling me about something that was going on at work, and he said something about a crew chief. Like they have a crew of guys, and then they have the crew chief. He's kind of like the team lead or the shift supervisor. And this has been my mentality since a little boy. I was like, how do you become a crew chief? Like, what do you have to do to become a crew chief?
Yeah.
And I can't remember what he told me, but it was, I don't know if you got to take some extra classes or do some extra training.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, you do make some extra money, but you also have to take on a crap ton more responsibility.
Right.
And the responsibility is not worth the money. And I was like, oh, okay. But even as a little boy, I thought to myself, and I'm like, that doesn't sound right. You know?
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't sound right to me. And you know what? And I've heard it throughout my entire career from other people. Like, right now, this is something that I'll tell you guys for working on your career. Like, you can start out doing something, starting from the bottom. Like, I started from the bottom of where I was. Like, I joined the military. I learned how to be a mechanic. And then I got hired as a sheet metal person. I had no sheet metal skills, and I learned as much as I could. I did the best I can, and I got really good at it. But once I picked up that skill, I started looking at, like, what's the next thing? And the next thing was being able to sign off somebody else's work. And this is where that came in, because people are like, I don't want that responsibility. They don't pay you extra for doing that.
Right.
And now you're taking the responsibility of signing off somebody else's work.
Right.
And I just saw it as, if layoffs come, if something was to ever happen, that gives me a leg up on other people.
Right.
I may not get paid extra, but it's worth something. So I'm going to do it. So I started working towards that, and I started working towards the next thing. And then I was like, you know what? How do I become a team lead? And team lead pays a little bit more, but you get a bunch more responsibility. Kind of like what? And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. And then they had like certification courses for this Six Sigma thing. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. And then the black belt thing came up. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. And then a job to become an inspector came up. Now, because I worked as an inspector, not getting paid any extra money, when a position in another department where they do pay a lot more money for being an inspector, I was able to get that job because of the sacrifice that I made before, because of what I learned before.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, in times like this, in times like today, when people are losing their jobs, or like, let's say, you know, if something was to happen, there's a lot of things that I can fall back on.
Right.
Like, worst comes to worst, I can always go back to being an inspector.
Right.
I can always go back to being a sheet metal guy.
Right.
I can always go back to being a mechanic.
Right.
I can use that Six Sigma green belt that I got.
Right.
I can use the black belt that I got.
Right.
You know what? We're even doing a podcast, and this may be worth, this training, this skill that we're developing may be worth something. So those are 6 different jobs that I can get.
Right.
But if all you do is the same thing
Yes.
for 20 years or 30 years, and something happens, you're in trouble. Especially when you worked from the bottom to the top. Because if you get laid off and you lose that job and you have to go get another job, you're going to start at the bottom of that job again. You're not going to go, you know, like if this job starts out at $15 an hour or $12 an hour and you work your way all the way up to $25, $30 an hour, well, you've been with that company for 20 years. That's why you're making that much money.
Right.
But if you get laid off and you don't have any other skills and you still have the same skill set from when you started 20 years ago, when you look for another job, guess where you're going to start?
From the bottom.
You're going to start from the bottom, and you're going to have to work your way all the way back
Right.
up. Unless you have other skills.
Yep.
So always, I mean, I feel when it comes to a career and having like a corporate job, kind of like what I have, is always look for that next thing. Figure out, And it's a selfish thing.
It's,
like people may be like, oh, look at the company man. Like, oh, another thing that I did, like I did tours around the facility and people would look at me and be like,
who in the hell do
why
you think you
why
are
you doing that?
Yeah.
Oh, look at him fucking kissing ass and this
Right.
and that. And it's like, well, guess what? When fucking layoffs come, and guess what? There's people that are worried now. But I'm not that worried because I know worst comes to worst, there is something that I can do. Something, anything.
Right.
I'll be all right. I'll be able to get a job doing something because I've done so many different things.
Right.
And
well, like your manager, I think it was your manager said that you're his, what did he say? You're his
I'm his
switchblade?
Swiss Army knife.
Swiss Army knife.
Yeah.
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 You
Because they're like, out of the team of people that I work with, I'm the only one that has experience in certain things. So when something like that comes up, they're like, hey, call Miguel.
Right.
And I'm brand new, to the team. So
yeah,
it's very useful, very handy. And I think that's something that and this is the thing is that you there's no way that you'll see that when you're doing it.
Yeah.
Just understand that when you have an opportunity, you may not know what it leads to. Just do it. Just go for it. What was your experience working in the law firms? How did you?
Exactly what you did.
Is it?
I mean, I started because I had zero experience working at a law firm.
Yeah.
Zero. So I started from the bottom. Now I hear. No.
Yeah.
I started from the bottom. I started as a secretary, not even a receptionist. I was answering phones. But I went to a law firm that was willing to train. So I went from answering phones to becoming a legal secretary, going into the war room, reading every file, learning about a complaint, learning about a response, learning about, reply, how many days does it take, and just learning. And I remember at times the law firm that the law firm that I was working for, I was working in the office. The husband and wife were working from home. It was the lawyer, the attorney, and the paralegal, which was his wife, and then me, and I would work in the office. And when they would leave, Hastings and Hastings were right next door. So I would go into the war room and just read as much as I can. I started doing research when I needed help. I would actually go to Hastings and the girls there had a lot more experience. So then I would start asking questions and
Exactly.
I taught myself. I went from making $10 with that law firm. I started with $10 an hour. I moved up to $12 an hour. I took my experience 2 years later to a different law firm, started making $19 an hour. I stayed at that law firm. I learned about probate. I learned about criminal law. I learned about trials and how to, just get involved, be more active. And I felt a lot of times it was very intimidating because I did not know. But I was never scared to ask.
That
questions.
is huge. That is huge. That is another thing that I've learned is when you feel that feeling and it makes you want to go away.
Yeah.
Go away from whatever that thing is.
Yes.
Go for it.
Yes.
Go get after it. Don't think about it too much. Just do it. If I get a new job where I'm first starting out, it's not going to be starting out at whatever pay it was when I first started. It's a lot higher now because of the skills that I have. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And all of those skills were paid for by the company. A lot of times companies will give you this and people, I've said it on the podcast before. Sometimes people feel like companies take advantage of us. Like they tell you when to do this. They tell you when to go to lunch. They tell you when to be here. They tell you when to go home. But it doesn't have to be one-sided.
Right.
You can also take advantage of the opportunities that they provide for you.
Yeah.
Go for it. Get it.